There is a classroom in a city called Yashio, just outside Tokyo, where a boy who did not want to be there walked in on his first day and found his name already on a small paper tag stuck to a desk in a group of 4. Not alone in a row facing the front. In a group. 3 other children looked up and said his name like they had been waiting for him. Within a week, that boy, who back home in his old school had eaten lunch in a bathroom stall so no one would see him alone, was ladling soup into bowls for those same 3 kids and hearing them say thank you. Nobody gave a speech about kindness. Nobody hung a poster. The room was just built, from the floor up, so that a child could not fall through the cracks because there were no cracks. My name is David Halloran. For 12 years, I taught in public elementary and junior high schools in Japan, most of them in that same working-class corner of Saitama. Then I came home to the States, and I watched my own grandson go through 3rd grade here, and I watched him get bullied, and I watched his good school do everything we do in this country. They found the boy who did it. They called him to the office. They called the parents. They separated the 2 kids. They did it all by the book, and it did not work, because we are solving the wrong problem. He started saying his stomach hurt on Sunday nights. He stopped talking about a boy who used to be his best friend. He asked me once, in the car, real quiet, if it was normal to not want to go to recess. If you are a parent, you know that voice. You know the little signs. The lunch that comes home uneaten. The sudden headache on a school morning. The friend who is not a friend anymore. I knew that voice from 1,000 kids across 12 years in Japan, and it broke something in me to hear it come out of my own grandson. I am going to show you exactly what Japanese schools do, in the order they do it, what it costs, which most of it is nothing, and how a parent can borrow it at home this week. And then I am going to tell you the part that should sit uneasy with you, which is that researchers figured this out 40 years ago, and most American anti-bullying programs still spend money doing the one thing that does not move the needle. Stay with me. By the end, you will understand why the child who throws the punch is not the person who decides whether bullying takes root. Somebody else in that room decides that, and once you see who, you cannot unsee it. Let me start with what almost every parent and every school here gets wrong, because if you do not understand this, none of the rest will help. Quick word before I go further. The things I learned in those schools, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in the pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. We treat bullying like a bad apple. One mean kid. Find him, punish him, remove him, and the problem is gone. That is how my grandson's school thought about it. That is how I thought about it too, my first year in Japan. A boy was getting picked on, and I pulled the ringleader into the hall the way I was trained to, and I leaned on him, and he nodded, and he stopped, for about 4 days. Then it started again, quieter, from a different kid, and then another, and I finally understood that I had been swatting one wasp while the whole nest hummed along untouched. The bully was not the problem. The bully was a symptom. The problem was the room. In Japan, there is a name for this. The most important book ever written there about school bullying is called, in translation, The Sickness of the Classroom. Not the sickness of the child. The classroom. They understood something we still fight, which is that a mean child in a healthy room stays small and gets pulled back in line by the other kids. But an ordinary child in a sick room turns cruel, and a whole class of ordinary children will turn on one kid together, and not one of them will feel like the villain. So here's the question that should keep you up tonight, the same one that kept me up. If the bully is not really the engine, then who is? Who actually decides whether one child's bad moment becomes another child's ruined year? To answer that, you have to go back to a Japanese researcher named Yoji Morita, who spent his life studying this and mapped out something he called the 4-layer structure of bullying. Picture any group of kids where bullying is happening. There is the child doing it. There is the child it is being done to. Simple 2 layers, and that is where American attention stops. But Morita saw 2 more layers, and they are the whole game. The 3rd layer is the audience, the kids who laugh, who film it, who cheer, or who just find it interesting. The 4th layer is the bystanders, the kids who look away, who pretend not to see, who are just relieved it is not them today. And here's the finding that reordered how I understood 12 years of my own classrooms. When Morita ran the numbers, the size of the audience predicted how badly the victims suffered more strongly than the number of actual bullies did. Read that again. The kids cheering mattered more than the kids swinging, because a bully with no audience is just a sad, angry child in an empty room, and it fizzles. A bully with a laughing crowd is a performer, and he will escalate to keep the crowd. I saw this play out more times than I can count. A boy would say something cruel to the kid next to him, and if the desks around them laughed, the next joke was sharper, and the one after that had a shove behind it. But I saw the other version too. One girl, in a class of mine in Yashio, turned around and said, in front of everyone, "That is enough, leave him alone." 5 words. And the boy doing it went red and sat down, because the crowd he was performing for had just turned on him instead. One kid, 5 words. That is how fragile the whole ugly thing is when the room is built right. So when your school finds the one mean kid and pulls him out and calls it handled, they have done nothing about the audience and nothing about the bystanders, which is to say they have done nothing about the actual machine. This is the expensive way, and it is everywhere. Assemblies, a speaker for the day, posters in the hall that say, "Be a buddy, not a bully." Report it, a hotline. All of it aimed at the bully, or aimed at getting the victim to tell on him. All of it after the fact. Japanese schools spend almost no money and take almost the opposite approach. They do not wait for bullying and then hunt the bully. They build the room every single day, so tight and so shared that the audience never forms and the bystanders never stay silent, because in a real community you do not stand by while your own people get hurt. That is the counterintuitive truth, and it is the whole video in one line. You do not stop bullying by stopping bullies. You stop it by dissolving the crowd. Now let me show you how they actually build that room, because it is not a mystery, and it is not a speech. It is a set of small daily habits, and I'm going to give them to you one at a time, and every one of them a parent can borrow. The first is the group. In a Japanese classroom, the children are sorted into small teams, 4 or 5 kids each, called Han. Your desk is in a Han. You do everything in your Han. And the point that took me years to appreciate is that the teacher builds these groups on purpose to be mixed. The strong reader sits with the struggling one, the loud kid with the shy one. And every few weeks, the groups are shuffled so no clique hardens into a wall and no child gets frozen out for a whole year. The trick here, the thing worth stopping and writing down, is that belonging is not left to chance. In an American classroom, a lonely kid has to go earn a seat at someone's table. In that room, the seat already exists, and it has his name on it. You can do a version of this at your own dinner table. Assign jobs, rotate them. One kid pours, one clears, one picks the music, and it changes weekly. It sounds like nothing. It is the opposite of nothing. The second habit is lunch. In Japan, the children serve each other. In almost every public elementary school, and that is around 99% of them, there is no cafeteria line. The food comes to the classroom, and a rotating team of kids in white aprons and caps ladles it out to their own classmates, and then the whole class eats together at their desks. And here is the part that stopped me cold the first time I saw it. The teacher eats the same food. There is no teacher's lunch. There is no premium option for the rich kid and a sad tray for the poor one. Everyone gets the same meal, served by their own friends, and before they eat, they all say a word of thanks together, and after they clean up together. You cannot easily bully a kid who just handed you your soup. The act of serving each other every single day quietly makes an us out of 30 separate children. The waste tells the story. Food thrown out in Japanese school lunch runs around 7%. In American schools, it is closer to 30. When you serve it and you finish it together, it means something. The third habit is the one Americans find hardest to believe. The children clean the school themselves. After lunch, for about 20 minutes, 4 days a week, the kids pick up rags and brooms and they clean their own classroom, the halls, the stairs, sometimes the toilets, usually to a cheerful little song piped over the speakers. And the 6th graders are sent down to help the 1st graders do theirs. Now think about what that teaches, under the surface. You do not trash a place you have to clean. You do not wreck what is yours. And a school that a child cleans with his own hands becomes a place he owns, not a place that is done to him. The trick is not the clean floor. The trick is that shared care for a shared space quietly makes wrecking it, or wrecking each other in it, feel wrong. Borrow it at home by refusing to be the maid. Let the kids own the space they live in. A child who cares for something is a child who is harder to turn cruel. The 4th habit is the meeting. Every morning and again at the end of the day, the class sits down together for a short meeting run partly by the students themselves, where problems in the room get named out loud and worked on by the group, not marched to the principal, handled by the community that has to live together. And there is a real class on the timetable called Dotoku, Moral Education, where once a week the children sit and talk through a story about fairness, courage, what you owe the person next to you. We treat character like something that happens by accident. They treat it like math. It gets a slot. It gets practiced. The trick worth stealing is that the group is made responsible for the group. When a Japanese teacher sees trouble, the move is often not to punish one child but to hand it to the class and say, "This is happening in our room. What are we going to do about it?" And that leads straight to the fifth habit, which is the keystone, the one that ties every other one together. They teach the audience, not just the bully, not just the victim. They go straight at the third and fourth layer, the watchers and the lookers away. And they teach those kids that doing nothing is a choice, that laughing is taking part, that the most powerful person in a bullying moment is not the bully and is not the victim. It is the ordinary kid standing there who decides whether to speak. Morita's whole point was that if you can turn the audience, if you can get even one bystander to say knock it off, the bully loses his stage and the thing collapses. So they build a room full of kids who belong to each other so completely that when one gets hurt, the others do not watch. They act. That is the entire system. Belong, serve, care, talk, and turn the crowd. Not $1 of it requires a program. Now let me pull the camera back, because I do not want to leave you thinking Japan solved this and painted it gold. It did not. Bullying there is real, and it is sometimes deadly. Back in 1986, a boy in Tokyo took his own life after his classmates ran a mock funeral for him while he was still alive, desk turned into a shrine, and the country was horrified. In 2011, a boy in a city called Otsu killed himself after relentless bullying, and that case shook the nation so hard it passed a national law in 2013 requiring every school to have a prevention committee and to survey kids and to catch it early. And just last year, the government logged a record high, over 760,000 reported bullying cases in a single year. So no, the habits I showed you are not a magic wall. Nothing is. But here's the thing I know in my bones after 12 years in those rooms, and after watching my own grandson here. The number of cases going up is partly because they finally started looking hard, and the daily habits, the hand, the shared lunch, the cleaning, the meetings, the turning of the crowd, do not stop every cruel child. What they do is shrink the ground. Cruelty grows in. They make the room a harder place for a child to be alone in. And alone is where bullying does its worst work. That is the hard-won piece I would carve over every school door in this country if they let me. You cannot punish your way to a kind classroom, you can only build one. My grandson's school found the boy and removed the boy, and the loneliness stayed exactly where it was, because loneliness was never the boy's doing, it was the room's, and no one was tending the room. So here is what you can do tonight, and it is free. At dinner, ask your kid 3 real questions. Not how was school, but who did you sit with at lunch, who ate alone today, and did anybody get picked on, and what did the other kids do? That last one matters most, because you are teaching your child to notice the audience, to notice which layer he is standing in. You are raising a bystander who acts instead of one who looks away. And do one more small thing. Once a week, make your kid serve somebody at the table. Let him carry the plates. Let her pour the drink for the little brother she fights with all day. It will feel too simple to matter. It is not. Every day for 12 years, I watched children hand each other their food, and I watched what it did to a room over the course of a year, and I am telling you plainly that a child who serves another child has a harder time hurting that child. Build it in early before the meanness ever has a chance to start, and you will have done more than any assembly ever did. Do that every night for a week and watch what your kid starts to see. Then tell me in the comments where you live and what your kid's school does about this, the real version, not the poster on the wall. I read them. I want to know if any school near you has figured out that the room is the patient. Next time, I am going to show you the one thing a Japanese teacher does in the first 10 minutes of the very first morning of the school year, before a single lesson, before a single rule is read, that quietly decides whether that class of 30 strangers will spend the year protecting each other or turning on each other. It costs nothing. It takes 10 minutes. And almost no American classroom does it. Until then, watch the crowd. Not just the kid throwing the punch, and remember that the person who ends the bullying is almost never the one everyone is looking at.